Hi everyone, welcome back to our fourth and final part of the cardiac cycle series. In this video, we'll review the entire cardiac cycle from ventricular filling through contraction, ejection, to relaxation, and then look at the concept summary table and the big picture sequence that ties it all together. So let's get started. So we begin with diastole, which is ventricular filling and atrial systole. During ventricular diastole, the ventricles are relaxed and contain only a small amount of blood, the end systolic volume. Because they're relaxed and nearly empty, their pressure is low. Meanwhile, blood returning from the body and lungs fills the atria, increasing atrial pressure slightly. When atrial pressure becomes higher than ventricular pressure, the atrioventricular valves open. Allowing blood to flow passively into the ventricles. This is passive ventricular filling, and it accounts for about 70 to 80% of the total filling. As the atria contract, we enter atrial systole, the active phase of filling. The atria give the ventricles a final push of blood, completing diastolic filling and bringing the ventricles to their end diastolic volume, about 120 milliliters. As the ventricles begin to contract, the ventricular pressure rises rapidly. When the ventricular pressure exceeds atrial pressure, the AV valves close. This produces the first heart sound, S1. Now all valves are closed. This short period is called isovolumetric contraction because the volume inside the ventricles doesn't change, but pressure continues to rise. Once ventricular pressure becomes higher than the pressure in the aorta and pulmonary artery, the semilunar valves open, and ventricular ejection begins. Blood is pushed into the arteries, and pressure in the ventricles peaks, then gradually falls as contraction ends. When the ventricles stop contracting, pressure inside them begins to fall. As soon as ventricular pressure drops below the pressure in the aorta and pulmonary artery, the semilunar valves close. This produces the second heart sound, S2. At this moment, both the AV and semilunar valves are closed again. This is isovolumetric relaxation. The ventricles are relaxing, but volume hasn't changed yet. As relaxation continues, ventricular pressure eventually falls below atrial pressure. This opens the AV valves again, and the cycle restarts with the next phase of ventricular filling. So that completes one full cardiac cycle, a continuous sequence of filling, contraction, and relaxation, driven entirely by pressure changes and valve movements. So as we've done in our previous videos, let's fill in our concept summary table, highlighting what happens at each phase. This will be followed by a big picture integration and grouping. Early diastole is passive filling. The ventricles are relaxed, the AV valves are open, the semilunar valves are closed, pressure is low, and blood flows in, increasing ventricular volume. Late diastole is atrial systole. The atria contract to give the ventricles a final push. AV valves remain open, semilunar valves are closed. Atrial pressure rises and ventricular volume reaches the end diastolic volume. Isovolumetric contraction occurs when the ventricles start contracting. All valves are closed. Volume remains constant. pressure rises, and we hear the first heart sound, S1. During ventricular ejection, the semilunar valves open, AV valves stay closed, blood is pumped out, pressure then peaks, then falls, and ventricular volume decreases to end systolic volume. Isovolumetric relaxation follows. Ventricles relax, all valves are closed, volume remains constant, pressure drops, and we hear the second heart sound, S2. Now let's step back. For a big picture understanding, we can group these phases into three main processes. The first process is filling. This combines early and late diastole, as the ventricles relax and fill with blood. Next comes contraction, which includes isovolumetric contraction and ejection, when the ventricles build pressure and pump blood into the arteries. Finally, relaxation, the isovolumetric relaxation phase, where the ventricles relax and prepare for the next cycle. Thinking in these three broad steps, filling, contraction, and relaxation, makes it easier to see how the heart maintains continuous blood flow, even though we break it down into 5 detailed phases like shown in this table. And that completes our series on the cardiac cycle, from filling to contraction to relaxation. Understanding these phases gives us a solid foundation for what happens next, how the heart's electrical activity drives these mechanical events. In the next series, we'll explore the electrical conduction system of the heart, starting with how impulses are generated in the sinoatrial node, and then spread through the conduction pathways to coordinate each heartbeat. Thanks for following along through the cardiac cycle series, and I'll see you in the next one.